Hello, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, a devastating construction accident leaves dozens injured in Tel Aviv. Israel and Australia come closer together, and some Israeli doctors may have found an unusual way to help people with autism. I'm Natasha Kirchak, here with the latest news in Israel. A devastating construction accident that took place earlier today has left 2 dead and dozens injured. I headed over to the scene in Tel Aviv to see what the latest news is. We're here at the site of a deadly construction accident that took place early this morning, about an hour and a half ago. The collapse that you see behind me was likely due to structural failure attempts after a tractor drove across the area. They originally thought that it was a crane accident, but that's not the case. Over 20 people have been evacuated to hospitals. Many are severely injured. The northeastern suburb of Tel Aviv, Ramat HaChayal, is known for being a hub for Israel's innovative high-tech industry. And while the area continues to grow as Israeli businesses soar, nobody could have expected that such a shocking incident would take place. 2 construction workers passed away after getting crushed by the parking structure as it collapsed to the ground, and another 24 people have been evacuated to local hospitals as a result of the incident. Police say they are still looking into what prompted the collapse of the underground parking garage, since initial reports that a crane had crashed into the site were incorrect. Access to the trapped workers was complicated because a 4-story parking garage is located entirely underground, and the 4th floor is unreachable. Behind us, you can see hundreds of people are working to pull out bodies, the remains of whoever is left there. As of now, there are 5 to 7 people who are still currently missing, but it's unclear who is alive and who's dead, and we can only hope that everything will turn out okay for those who are still alive.
We were having a meeting with my manager, and suddenly the floor shook and everything's shaking, and we all get up, start going under our desks, thinking it's an earthquake.
It was a bomb, and all the floor was like an earthquake. I was here yesterday. My clinic is over there. Disaster. It's disappeared. All the building.
We all file out to the 12th floor, to the roof, to see what's going on, and we see a parking lot that was being built here for 3 years now, suddenly gone. So the whole thing absolutely gone. People running around scared and panicking. Minutes later, 120 seconds later, a pack of ambulances arrive, a bunch of fire trucks and police.
The Home Front Command has divided the disaster site into 5 sections where search and rescue units have spent all day. Yoram Levy is a national spokesperson of the Fire and Rescue Authority and was one of the first people to reach the scene.
The first team came over, they evaluated what's happening, they immediately asked for assistance. Right now, when we are talking, the IDF is taking over.
You guys have an estimate about how many bodies are under there?
We think that either 5 or 7 people are missing now. We don't know what is their condition, if they're alive or not. We don't know. This is something that now the IDF is taking over. That's the reason they have other tools and instruments that might help to find out.
We first came here, we thought that there was only 1 body left in the rubble, but clearly that's not the case. There are 5 to 7 people that are missing, and the IDF has now taken over the search efforts, and they're trying to use big tractors like the ones we see all around us to remove the bodies and hopefully find those who are missing. I think the most poignant thing to remember about this accident is that it's affected people from all across Israeli society, because you have Arab Israeli construction workers here, Jewish workers here. Everybody's being affected by this incident. This accident isn't the first tragic construction event to take place this year. Since the beginning of the year, 32 people have died in construction site accidents, and it's clear that the state needs to further investigate security regulations, especially when it comes to building. We can only hope that the latest victims are able to recover quickly. This is Natasha Kirchak reporting for ILTV. The Australian Foreign Minister is in Israel on a mission to promote bilateral cooperation. And now it looks like the Israeli Prime Minister wants to return the favor. Netanyahu has agreed to become the first ever Israeli leader to visit Australia. Australian Foreign Minister Julie Bishop sat down with Israeli leaders in Jerusalem on Sunday as she began a two-day visit to Israel and the Palestinian territories.
I just want to greet you and say that your friendship is terrific. Australia, the government, and yours personally, and we appreciate our friends.
Australia and Israel are in the process of developing a treaty on innovation, and Bishop is in the Jewish state to promote the bilateral cooperation. The new agreement may include building a launching pad in Tel Aviv and collaborating on regional security issues and the Middle East peace process.
I also think that our relationship has the potential to enter into new fields of endeavour, particularly in innovation, where Israel is a world leader. We are delighted that our new innovation agenda adopted by the Australian government and embraced by the Australian people through the last election will see a landing pad in Tel Aviv, which I'll visit tomorrow, which shows that Australia has much to learn from Israel in the area of science, research and innovation, but we have much to learn from each other.
Earlier Sunday, Bishop paid tribute to the victims of the Holocaust at Israel's Holocaust Memorial Museum in Jerusalem, Yad Vashem, where she reminded Israeli leaders about Australia's role in the aftermath of the tragic event.
On behalf of the Australian people, I was honoured to lay a wreath in memory of all those who suffered and died in the Holocaust. The words I have written here are, Australia will never forget those who suffered at the hands of this evil brutality. As a country, we gave refuge to many who survived the Holocaust, and they hold a special place in the hearts of the Australian people. Yad Vashem reminds us that however troubled our world may be, the forces for good must prevail for our common humanity.
The Australian Foreign Minister is set to hold talks with Palestinian leadership as well, and will be traveling to the West Bank today to meet the Palestinian Prime Minister. But before Bishop heads to the area, she's extended a special invitation to the Israeli Prime Minister.
I want to take this opportunity to reaffirm our absolute enduring commitment to the State of Israel and our friendship, and invite you to come to Australia. And we're thinking there's a little window of opportunity early next year maybe, and the Australian public would warmly embrace you, welcome you.
Netanyahu has agreed to head down under next year, which would be a landmark move for Australian-Israeli relations. The two countries have had a diplomatic relationship since 1949 and maintain trade relations worth almost $100 million on an annual basis. But for whatever reason, an Israeli Prime Minister has never visited Australia. It looks like that's about to change, however, especially since the Australian Foreign Minister seems to want to preserve positive relations with the Jewish state.
This is an opportunity for me to ensure that this relationship is not taken for granted, that this relationship will continue to be nurtured by both sides, and that it will continue to flourish. We have a friendship based on common values.
Today, Israel's train networks were running normally and everyone experienced the usual commute to work. But a political fallout over the issue may continue for quite some time. Only a quarter of the public supports Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's decision to cancel planned repair work to rail lines over the weekend that ended up stranding tens of thousands of commuters and causing massive gridlocks on many of the nation's busiest highways yesterday. That number may rise when Israelis realize a delay cost about $3.2 million in lost revenues to Israel Railways, mostly in compensation to contractors. According to a poll by Israel's Channel 2 News, 49% of those surveyed hold the Prime Minister responsible for the chaos, as opposed to just 14% who think Transportation Minister Israel Katz is to blame. Netanyahu suspended the Saturday work when ultra-Orthodox parties, angry over the desecration of the Sabbath, threatened to bolt from his fragile government coalition. Netanyahu then accused Katz, who is his Likud party rival, of intentionally instigating the crisis by ordering unnecessary work. The Israeli premier even gave Katz a public dressing down during the weekly cabinet meeting. And rumors were running rampant that the transportation chief was about to get fired. But now Netanyahu's chief of staff says that's no longer an option after meeting with Katz to resolve the feud. The public agrees. Only 17% thought Katz should be booted, while 69% believe he should stay on the job.
All in all, the majority of Israelis think the work should have proceeded as scheduled. 63% oppose Netanyahu's decision to cancel the railway repairs on Shabbat, and only 25% are in his corner.
Every few months, a new peace initiative hits the headlines in Israel, with almost every country involved. The French initiative has been rejected by the Israeli government. The Egyptian one has almost influenced the new Israeli coalition, and the recent Russian one still remains on the table. Joining me in the studio today is Middle East expert and former Knesset member Dr. Einat Wilf. Thanks so much for coming in.
My pleasure.
So to begin, 2016 was a big year. Why are all these peace initiatives coming out now?
I would say mostly the countries are bored. I mean, there's nothing to do on the international stage. They feel helpless with respect to real issues, the biggest one being, of course, Syria, questions that have to do with Eastern Europe, the question of the future of the EU. So somehow there's this vision that making peace among Israelis and Palestinians is the holy grail of international diplomacy. And a lot of countries and diplomats who want to make a name for themselves, who feel that they cannot make a name for themselves anywhere else, somehow latched onto this issue.
Interesting, the holy grail of political issues. I like the way that you put that. So usually the United States is a key player in any Israeli-Palestinian peace talk, but why is U.S. absent right now in the recent discussions, or are they absent?
They are, in the sense that they've already tried and failed. 2 years ago, with much fanfare, they've declared an intention to bring peace in 9 months, even though both the Israelis and Palestinians told them it's a very bad idea. Somehow, Secretary of State Kerry thought that he could, through his sheer work and personality, lead the sides to peace. That, of course, came crashing down, and the United States at this moment has no intention to try anything like that again.
Now, what is the influence of, the growing Israeli-Egyptian relations on the peace process? I know that Egypt is supporting a Saudi Arabian initiative, but what does that mean for Israel?
That is by far the most promising track. Egypt has always been critical to the Palestinian issue. In many ways, you could say that Egypt is the founder of the PLO. They've always played a very big role in pushing this issue. It was a key element of the Egyptian-Israeli peace treaty. They see themselves as, given that they're a leader in the Arab world, that this is part of their responsibility. So this is the most promising, because if anyone can lead the Palestinians to make the necessary concessions that they need to make for peace, it will have to be an Arab country.
That's a good point. Now, Vladimir Putin, the leader of Russia, surprised us all by proposing for Israeli and Palestinian leaders to come and to Russia and speak. What are his motivations? Why is he suddenly getting involved in this issue?
The motivation is mostly one of image. President Putin seems to enjoy sticking it to the United States whenever he can. If he can do what the United States has been trying to do for so long, and he succeeds and they fail, it provides international standing, again, like almost no other issue. This is the issue that so many countries and diplomats look to build their name on. So it's mostly him identifying that the United States is not going to touch the issue right now, thinking that given his involvement in Syria, the closer relationship with Israel, that there's an opportunity for him to make a name for himself, and he's taking advantage of this opportunity.
Is he going to push forward and make this happen? And will Israel even be willing to, engage in discussions that have Russia so heavily involved?
He's definitely going to try. There's only gains for him in that, because if he doesn't succeed, no one's going to blame him. No one expects success at this point. But I think Israel will be very careful about granting so many brownie points to Vladimir Putin. It will have to be careful about the United States, so it remains to be seen.
So the final big question, is there a real chance for any of these peace initiatives to actually succeed? And are the Israelis and Palestinians ready right now to actually move forward with peace talks?
The short answer is no, of course. We see it in many polls and positions and in numerous efforts. But the place where we do have hope is really in the massive changes taking place in the Arab world. The fact that Israel no longer appears to be the biggest problem, the biggest enemy, the enemy around which the Arab countries coalesce. So if there is hope, and it's not tomorrow, it's in the changes in the Arab world that will ultimately lead them to say, we are going to accept Israel as existing here, as an ally even, and if we need to push our brothers, the Palestinians, to make concessions they have not been willing to make in the past, we're going to do this. And in truth, the Palestinians without Arab support will find it very difficult to continue their rejectionist stance, and if the Arab countries push them to make peace with Israel, that's the only chance we have for it.
For Israel, is there any positive outcome of, engaging in multilateral dialogue about this issue, or are direct talks what's necessary?
Both. I mean, there are issues that are direct, these are the neighbors, these are the people with whom we'll need to make peace, but ultimately it is about the Arab world at large. The Palestinian issue has always been part of the grand question of the Arab world, the Muslim world, how they see the issue of Jewish sovereignty in their midst. It cannot be disconnected. And also for Israelis are more likely to take the risks necessary for peace if they see the rewards are in the form of greater acceptance to the region as a whole.
Well, thank you so much for coming in and for the insight. We can only hope for the best.
Thank you.
Israeli officials have announced that they will host prosecutors from the International Criminal Court in the near future. The team is coming to investigate Palestinian charges that Israel committed war crimes during its 2014 conflict with the Hamas terror group in the Gaza Strip. But the Jewish state is denying the allegations and is offering proof against them. Even though Jerusalem vehemently opposes any prospective ICC investigation, officials say they will fully cooperate with a working team coming to assess the Hamas allegations. According to statutes at The Hague, the ICC cannot open its own probe until being convinced a state under suspicion is either unable or unwilling to pursue the matter itself. And that's a task Israel says is easy to fulfill because the competency and reputation of the state's own judicial system is beyond reproach. Officials say they can more than adequately prove that the Israeli courts are able to see justice done over accusations of excessive force during and preceding the Gaza conflict. Israeli leaders have long charged that up to half of those killed on the Palestinian side were terrorists, and that the Islamist rulers of the Palestinian enclave are to blame for the civilian death toll, because they deliberately placed rocket launchers, tunnels, and other military installations in public areas. In fact, Israel insists that Hamas is guilty of war crimes for having used its own population as human shields, while having fired missiles at Israeli civilian centers. Many caregivers in the health field have long advocated for the medical benefits of cannabis, especially when it comes to treating PTSD, epilepsy, or nausea caused by chemotherapy. Now, an Israeli doctor believes cannabis has another major use and claims it can be used to help those suffering from autism. There have long been personal accounts of how cannabinoids can help improve the quality of life for autistic people. But so far there's never been any clinical evidence to prove it. Now that's about to change due to the efforts of Dr. Adi Eran, who heads a pediatric neurology department at Sha'arei Tzedek Medical Center in Jerusalem. He's already obtained preliminary approval from Israel's health ministry to conduct the first ever formal trial of this kind. 120 autistic participants are signed up to take part, including low to medium functioning male and female patients between the ages of 4 and 30. The study will specifically examine the effects that cannabis oil has on certain behaviors, such as physical aggression that's often accompanied by acute anxiety. And in case you're worried about stoned autistic people wandering around, you need to keep in mind that all the intoxicating elements of medical cannabis are removed before being administered. There are very few comedians who can get an audience in Israel laughing about the Islamic State, and it turns out Louis C.K. is one of them. ILTV's Steve Leibowitz sat down with the Times of Israel editor David Horowitz to find out how the comedian's performance went in the Holy Land.
David, you started out a most recent column by saying it's a rare comedian who can get an audience in Israel laughing about being beheaded by the Islamic State terror group. A column about Louis C.K. Why that?
Well, because even when you're reading that back to me, it's quite something, isn't it? That when you're discussing Islamic State and beheading people, that we're doing so in the context of a review of a stand-up comedian's performance. So he played two shows in Jerusalem a few days ago.
Sold out?
Almost completely, I think.
In a big arena?
Yeah, like 9,000 seats twice, and almost sold out both times, yeah. He didn't play anywhere else in Israel. It was quite striking for a Jerusalemite. We're always schlepping off to Tel Aviv and Caesarea to see anything, basically. And here he was, and a lot of people came in from out of town, and he was really good. I mean, he was good. Like, I went to Seinfeld when he played in Tel Aviv, I think it was about 6 or 8 months ago, and also in a great big basketball arena. And with Seinfeld, you really felt you were with a pro, and you knew that sort of every line had been worked and reworked, and the emphases to make sure you got the maximal laughs. And with Louis C.K., you felt that less, actually. You felt that it was a less rehearsed performance and more of a sort of easygoing chat, which it wasn't. My son went to the earlier show and we went to the later show. It was almost word for word the same. And that was even more impressive in a way. It appeared to be much more easygoing and all the more sort of enjoyable. It was a relaxing experience as well as a very funny one. Whereas I don't know how much stand-up you've seen. You sometimes worry about the comedian. You worry, is he going to be funny? Are the audience going to like him? Are the people you brought going to like him? You didn't have those worries with Louis C.K. It was just funny and a pleasant evening.
The Seinfeld is Jewish, clearly Jewish, and says so. And his TV show was very, very popular over many years. So you can understand why here in Israel he would have something of a following. Why Louis C.K.? Why would he have?
First, I don't know the answer to that. And he's a big star, and he was coming, and so on. And people, generally shows do pretty well here because people like to go and see people, who are making the effort to come here.
Did he tone down the cursing at all because he was in Jerusalem?
No. Oh, really? Never mind the cursing. I mean, some of it was really, my lovely son warned his old parents, it's really rude, folks, and it was really rude, but it was, some people would have been offended by it, depending on what offends you and how easily you take offense. I didn't think it was offensive. It was certainly rude. It was certainly crude. I think people have seen his show on TV. He's also got this Jewish thing in there, Steve. He tells this story, and he told it about his grandfather, this is what he said, his one-legged, Hungarian-born, violin-playing, secretly Jewish doctor grandfather, who, after the Holocaust, winds up in Mexico because the Americans wouldn't take him in, goes to a dance, falls in love with a Catholic woman, never tells her that he's Jewish. They get married, they have Louis C.K.'s father, among, I don't know if they had other children as well. The father, when Louis C.K. is 10 years old, converts to Judaism, goes back to the Judaism that his father had never acknowledged. He told us all this story. So I don't know about the one-legged violin part, but the secretly Jewish grandfather, doctor of Mexico, that's true. That's on his... That's what, he said this in interviews. That is, so there's a one of those crazy Jewish stories in Louis C.K.'s background too.
It's been a very busy summer with some top rock bands, top bands, a couple of very, very prominent comedians. BDS dead, as far as we're concerned, as far as that kind of thing going on?
No, I don't think so. First of all, it's been a great summer. There have been some really, terrific shows here, and as it should be. I would not write off BDS. First of all, I'm not sure who would have come if it wasn't for pressure, and the people who do come know that they face pressure, and it's kind of an act of will to defy the pressure and so on. I think that the very effort is something that Israel needs to worry about. There's an ongoing effort to demonize Israel. It's at its most potent in areas that have a real impact in the arts, on university campuses. So this summer, lots of people came to Israel, and I think, by the way, other people where sometimes you might think it's BDS. I'm not sure what happened with Santana a few years ago, for example, because it was widely suggested that Santana had cancelled because of BDS. Well, presumably not, because he played it this summer, unless he'd had a change of heart. So it's not always clear, but I think the effort to misrepresent and demonize Israel, even if it didn't have an impact on how many people played concerts in Israel this summer, is emphatically something that Israel needs to take seriously and needs to concentrate on finding ways to counter.
David Horowitz, editor of Times of Israel, thanks so much for being with us at ILTV.
It's time for our Hebrew word of the day. Today's word is koach, which means strength in Hebrew. In the Bible, koach is usually used to reference God's power, but in contemporary Hebrew, the word has a lot more uses. Koach can mean strength, courage, power, ability, control, stamina, force, gravity, and more. It's also used in some of the most popular Israeli phrases. If an Israeli says "en li koach," he's trying to say he doesn't have any more strength, both literally and figuratively. The phrase can be used when you're tired or annoyed. But here's the good news. Yesh li koach, or I have strength, is also pretty commonly used. So I hope that you have koach for the rest of the work week. Let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tuesday is expected to be sunny with a high of 86 degrees. The temperature should stay the same through Wednesday, but the skies will be partly cloudy. All right, everybody, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.77 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv, and don't forget to check out our next update at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Thanks for watching, and see you tonight.